Fantastic. Thank you, Kelly, and happy February 29th, everybody. We are live from ETHDenver doing the AMA in a little bit of a different fashion today for Salt's Unsalted AMA. We have a short agenda we'll cover off. Shawn and I wanted to recap on the latest updates that we have regarding the Celsius refinancing. We will then cover off a little bit of what we're seeing at ETHDenver so far. Today is the kickoff of the main event. They're doing actually the opening talks with Governor Polis and other guests now. In fact, that may have just wrapped up at 11 o'clock Mountain Time here. And we'll highlight a couple of the things that we're seeing and excited to look at while we're on site over the next 4 days. And then we also want to share an upcoming promotion that we'll be announcing on March 1st. So we'll give a little bit of a preview from that. Shawn, are there any other topics that you want to make sure we cover off?
No, that's it. I think tons of people here in Denver. It's exciting to see so many people coming in from Denver, but that agenda sounds good. We can always open it up for AMA wherever crowd wants to take it.
Yeah, if people have questions on any of the topics as we go through them or anything else that's top of mind, please raise your hand and Kelly will get you up on stage. So let's jump into Celsius. So we on February 23rd was the deadline for people that are interested in refinancing to provide a data sharing authorization with Celsius. Earlier this week, we did get information from Celsius regarding the people that have authorized them to share their loan information with us, which is great. So we are going through that and verifying the information and making sure we answer any questions around that over this week and into next week, which will be a precursor to then being able to restart the refinancing process. We are still waiting on communication and confirmation from Celsius about when they will be ready to start, and we will let everybody know as soon as they do. In the meantime, the just to reinforce the key things that need to happen are that you still will have to complete your irrevocable agreement through ahead of time, which we will have shared with you. And then you'll need to share that with Stretto. And then you'll also need to complete a loan agreement with SALT. The deadline for submitting the irrevocable agreement is March 15th. And we should be tracking on the loan agreements to that date as well. Now, if all of those agreements get done earlier and we get the thumbs up from Celsius that we can start refinancing, then we absolutely will. Let me pause there. Shawn, first of all, anything else that I missed off or anything that you want to add?
No, I think we did learn that there were a lot more people that had elected for SALT to be an option that haven't gone through the full process. So we're continuing to beat the drum on we want to help everybody where there are deadlines and we need to have a full-blown account verified and an application to match for anybody that's going through that process. And so we still got some follow-up and blasting of emails and sharing the word. But if you're that person or you hear this later and you haven't quite gotten all through all the steps, please reach out to us. Let's move as fast as we can before the March 15th date.
Yeah, in the most direct way, if you have questions or want somebody to respond to you, please reach out to sales@saltlending.com, and a member of the sales or the loan ops team will be able to get back in touch with you as quickly as possible. Let me pause. Kelly, it looks like we've got AK has requested or has a question. Let's see, I think they're connecting. AK, ask your question when you're ready.
Question is, thanks guys for having me on. Question is, if they start rolling these refis early, or even if it's the 15th or later, what is the sort of criteria for first in line, first in time, first in line, or how are you guys thinking about it, or is there any reason to it at all?
Yeah, there's a couple factors. One, everything is complete. So first in, first out to some degree. We can't complete these if they're not all the way ready to go. Second to that, it's optimizing for smaller loans first, just to speed things up because we can get a lot of them done quickly and work through the process with Celsius on the loans that we think are quick, if you will, and lower risk and have everything in order. But really, it's just going to be coordinating and batching until we get through all of it. We know there's different nuance and circumstances to each of this. So we'll, as soon as we get into it, I think we'll have a really good sense first couple days of if we're talking a couple days or a couple weeks to blast through these. But yeah, without going into too much detail, that's basically it. And we're continuing to prioritize the ones that are completely signed on the dotted line and ready to go. And then anything that still has loose ends, we'll keep pushing on until we get there.
And just to add to what Shawn said, we are still waiting to coordinate with Celsius on the exact steps. So we do anticipate we will have a couple smaller runs with some of the initial loans to make sure everybody gets the process up and running. And then hopefully we'll see everything speed up from there. Hey, Kay, thank you for your question. Hopefully that addressed it.
No, it did. Thank you. I've just been the only thing is I've been on top of this since the beginning, and I don't know if I'm probably not the smallest. I'm definitely not the biggest, but I'm in the middle.
Yeah, we want to just prioritize everybody, right? Everybody's been waiting. Everybody wants to get this resolved. Reality is we can only go one at a time once we get moving. And I think we've done a great job for all the people who've been ahead of this and getting everything ready. And now we're just eagerly waiting to get through it so that it doesn't feel like some people have gotten theirs taken care of and other people haven't. We want to just be as rapid as we can. But of course, the primary objective is being safe and detail oriented and just getting these done right. So every single circumstance is taken care of for the long haul. But I do feel like we're really close. We're definitely very close.
It does feel like we're getting to the final steps, and
Knocked on wood.
Celsius.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe we're not close. I don't want to jinx us.
I think we're getting there. Any other questions from everybody that's joined us today? Any other live questions around the Celsius refinancing? All right, we'll shift topics here a little bit then. Remind you, if you do have questions around the Celsius refinancing, you can go to saltlending.com/Celsius dash refinancing dash solution. There's more information there, but the most direct way is just to reach out to sales@saltlending.com. And so, Shawn, why don't we shift gears a little bit? And you've had a couple evenings out already around ETHDenver. I've been down to Build Week and down here today for the kickoff of the main event. What are you excited about for ETHDenver this year?
So that's where my head's at, and I think it's awesome to see so many people traveling to Denver. We don't have to go anywhere very far to go find people that are coming to us. That's the best part. It's incredible to see how it just continues to grow every year. It's shocking just how many people come from around the world. There's all kinds of people from, you name it, countries that are very far away that are making the trip to be here. The sentiment seems to be tons of VCs spinning up and tons of projects and investors looking to match. So there's a very strong tone of a bull signal, if I ever saw one, that people are just ramping into trying to get ahead of wherever they're at in that cycle. Tons of people looking for investments in networking. And so I'm excited to see what is new always. There was some interesting panels I saw just off the cuff that were related to building on Bitcoin, which I found was interesting. There's a lot of cross chain promotional stuff people are building. But I think I'm most excited just to see great people showing up. We have an event on Friday, very excited about. That's an invite only. If anybody's here in Denver, please DM us and we can see if we can get you on the list. It's Friday at 3 to 6 downtown, not too far from the convention center. Did I get that wrong?
It's Friday 4 to 7.
4 to 7. There you go.
There, tomorrow night, yeah.
Excited to go know what time it is. Back to
Well,
you.
Shawn, I agree with you. It's exciting just to see the growth. I think there was roughly 20,000 people that came to the event last year, and they've expanded the space this year, which has been exciting to see. I came down earlier this week in the event center. So the whole thing is being hosted at the National Western Center in right near the Coliseum in Denver. And there's a main event center where they normally do rodeos, which is a big arena, and that's where all the hackathon and all the build week events were going on. And it's pretty impressive to see the amount of space and the developers that are there, as well as the talks. To your point about just more and more stuff is happening in the ecosystem, is happening cross chain, and I think continuing to highlight the financial elements of the growth of the ecosystem. I happened to catch a really interesting talk yesterday that was talking about Farcaster and how sort of the Web3 social aspect and the ability to really create a future that is very different than Web2 social, where there is monetary transactions and there's value exchange directly on social media, which in many respects, Salt has been in and around that space and will continue to be in and around that space as we think about how to help people both interact between TradFi and the crypto space, as well as leverage their assets in different shapes and forms. Be curious, anybody on that's sort of in the audience, one, are you at Denver or anything that you've heard about or excited about?
Nobody. Everybody's probably remote FOMOing.
The other thing I noticed as I was walking around earlier today, just the main center where there's all the companies. There's a lot more companies here this year in sort of booths that are set up. So looking forward to a fun 4 days ahead, just getting around and having interesting conversations around sort of new resources and directions that the ecosystem is going.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on it. I hosted it was a Bitcoin meetup back in the day, but we hosted a group that was also interested in the Ethereum launch when it first happened. And it's just totally nuts to think back and just, it feels like forever, but it's a short amount of time. It's just continued to grow. I don't know exactly how many people will be here this time. I haven't seen those stats, but it feels at least 5,000 more people in attendance a year show up. And it's so distributed all over the entire city that there's no way you could follow everything that's going on. It's just impossible.
I would love to touch on that since we don't have to talk a whole hour and a half about Celsius. Why don't we take a minute for Shawn and then Hunter to talk about how you originated in the Bitcoin and crypto space, and like when you got started, and Shawn, when we used to do the Bitcoin meetups and took it as payment back in 2012 at the restaurant and different things. I think that'd be fun for the crowd to hear.
Yeah, it's hard to remember how much stuff has changed. Just you have these moments, you're like, what year was that? But yeah, I first heard about Bitcoin on just a podcast that was about future stuff and investing and libertarian future tech kind of things, fringe, I would call them. And the idea just really caught me off guard to think that you could have something that could be scarce online that you couldn't copy. And that sent me down that deep dive where for days I just couldn't think about anything else when I downloaded the first QT wallet and was trying to figure out how to mine on my laptop, just letting it run. And the implications were just so profound that it was this spark that it's hard to, I don't think has happened to me any other time in my life ever. Nothing has come close to the mind-blowing experience of first kind of understanding the Bitcoin white paper and seeing it in action. But you couldn't touch it, you couldn't see it, couldn't find people to talk about it. Everybody was online and fairly anonymous. There were some people like on the podcast talking about it, but it still seemed like just such a wild idea. And the cyberpunk list, I went and trying to check that out in early threads, and there just wasn't anything going on. There was no market or anything. And then I just tracked that as closely as I could. Prior to that, I was really interested in investing in gold and real estate and all things hard money coming out of 2008, just being shocked and watching everything I had invested in getting blown apart prior, and then thinking I didn't understand money at all. I thought I was pretty savvy before that. The education and the timing of it just it became a full blown passion, obsession. And then so I tried to find people, tried to figure out where you could get a hold of this stuff, and as that kind of evolved and started to develop, you could track everything that was going on very easily because the updates weren't that frequent. So often there'd be a new project or there'd be something going on. You'd meet somebody new. And I just became the guy that was annoying to all of my friends because they didn't understand what I was talking about. And so I wanted to find a way to meet people, and bootstrapped a startup when I moved back to Denver. Found about 7 guys that would meet and have pizza and talk about it, and basically said, yeah, let's start hosting these. At the time, I was running restaurants and said, we've got Monday nights available where there's nobody in our spot. You just have to be respectful and tip. You can't just drink water. You can geek out, but you can't geek out without leaving a tip. And then that just caught on, and we would do every other week or so, we would do these meetups.
What I always, sorry to interrupt, but what I always think about is how many servers out there got 1 or 2 Bitcoin back in the day and don't even know where they're at as a tip.
I regret that because I gave
I
away so
know.
much Bitcoin. I was just throwing that stuff. Just anybody that would listen to me, I'd be like, here, have this.
Right.
It's really cool. I promise.
100%.
And then now I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? Every single one of them lost it. Or at least I would have probably done better things with it, let's say that way. But yeah, it was about adoption. And that's what led to building Salt, was identifying these pain points and figuring out where the ecosystem needed to grow. And I'd really been focused on when the market would get big enough, if it would get big enough. I believed it would get big enough, but you never really knew. On taking payments, that was what I was focused on, is removing all the credit card fees and how you could incentivize networks on payment rails. But as soon as the IRS came out with the stance that it was property and it'd be every transaction would be a capital gain or loss, I just shot that one down immediately. Plus, I was seeing it firsthand with everybody. Like, they would be enthusiasts. We had it all set up to where you could buy beer and food and tip in Bitcoin. But it was a joke because everybody unanimously, whether it was 20 people, 100 people, whatever, the majority of people, as soon as they would pay or tip the server, they'd pull their phone out and start talking about how they needed to go buy more and top up. So it was clear that everybody wanted to hold it at that point in time more than spend it directly. And that was the pivot into thinking about what would need to be true if you could actually hold it long term and still get cash out of it and not have to sell. And that hence was the formation of kind of the early days of Salt, trying to talk to bankers and people like this. And there was nobody that would formally recognize it as collateral. And everybody that spent it wanted to save it more than they wanted to spend it. They were spending it just because they wanted to be an enthusiast. And I still think that's going to come full circle. Circular economy will get there, but it's a growth cycle that it takes a while to get there. We're now seeing it, but it's definitely not there yet. That's what got me involved, and have stayed involved ever since. But yeah, Hunter, I'll pass it over to you while we reminisce.
Yeah, no, I came to it with a similar level of curiosity and just awe, but from a different perspective. I have really spent my career previously in TradFi, really around payments and loan lending globally, working with a number of the large banks, and I used to do a bunch of work with Visa and was on the Visa Europe board, and so was heavily involved in that and understood what was good about it, but also where the major gaps were. And about 2017, I got asked to start to teach at the University of Colorado around blockchain and introduce Ethereum and Bitcoin and the core elements of what the potential of the ecosystem had, and really just have been hooked ever since in terms of the opportunity to bring some of the things that are capable with the decentralized systems to fix challenges globally around financial services, as well as one of the things I'm excited about that drew me to Salt was there are wealth management tools that billionaires are able to take advantage of to be able to borrow against their assets, to have liquidity in terms of business and personal needs that just have not been accessible to a wider group of people. And I really feel like crypto and new companies and Salt and others are making that more accessible, where people can truly build wealth, hold assets, and be able to leverage that for living life. I truly believe the future of finance is hybrid, and that we will need to find ways to take advantage of the best elements of both systems for the next 10 to 20 years, and that finding ways to make that easy for people to try, to learn more about, and then to use as best suits their lifestyle and their needs is an exciting challenge to be part of.
Yeah, you touched on something there, Hunter, where we definitely share that in common. The concept of exactly what you said, seeing how in existing markets, the people who would get a hold of and do well enough to get assets, or however you ended up having assets that would capture the inflation, and the tools that would allow for access to credit and capital and money, it it's completely night and day what that will do if you have access or don't have access. And there's a lot of barriers to get there for the average person in the United States, and then of course all over the world it's different, but most likely there's that common thread. And having thinking about Bitcoin from this granular level, where you could you could get a hold of a tiny amount, and proportionately you could still program and be digital around or build on top of that, which we're barely now starting to see that get introduced, but we've seen a ton of it. We've seen what it looks like when you do it in all these other chains and Ethereum. The ability to hold onto that property and build tools and wealth systems that are outside of the traditional financial structure and the asset classes that exist together, I think is completely life changing if you do that the right way. And there just was no tools to do that. It was either just you could get a hold of it and you could sell it, and that's all you could do. And I still think we have a long way to go, but that definitely is a common theme. I saw the value in that and still do, and think if we can build out all the infrastructure around that, especially based off of what has worked in the past, the tools that work and the integration probably still be parallel. There'll be a parallel system, but the paths and the bridges between the two become more and more valuable for more and more people. Anyways, geeking out on that. I know we have other things to talk about, but thanks for the prompt, Kelley.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And if anybody in the audience wants to come up and talk about their origin story with into crypto or how they got started, I kick myself every day for not listening to Shawn in 2012 and buying a bunch of it. Because what was it, like $1? I probably wouldn't still be working for you in a way.
You would, because
uh,
you love it.
I know, I know. I do see Dan join. Dan, do you want to come up and tell your origin story into crypto? You're welcome to. If not, we can pivot and get into another topic.
No, but the common theme of really empowerment of finance is such a key element around that, is such a motivating factor, both helping people learn about what's possible and also working to create the tools and the systems to connect people globally. I think that's one of the things, having been fortunate to live and work and travel internationally, it's so fun to be able to have transactions where you're actively engaging with people that are the best in their trade somewhere on the other side of the world in a way that 10, 15 years ago you just never could do it, even 5, 6 years ago, in terms of being able to comfortably and expeditiously send the money to them and verify who they are, and not have to deal with all the hoops and the international exchange fees for processing payments, etc. That's all. It's a fun thing to be experiencing, and hopefully for us to be playing a key role in pushing and challenging the ecosystem.
Yeah, 100%. Dan, you are on stage now. Do you want to tell us about how you got started?
You gotta be careful when you tell a Leo and a middle child that he's on stage.
That's hilarious.
Start going. I'm not gonna lie, definitely a little bit of a degen. Hunter's very altruistic, and the socialization of access to financial tools and services. I think my first YOLO into Bitcoin was because I had a friend who was talking about it and just looking at the ability to take some money and turn it into more money. Seemed like a great idea to me at the time. And then I had a fantasy football team or fantasy football league that I had to buy into using crypto just because we thought it was a fun idea to do. And that just turned me on to buying and holding crypto. And then when I lost the fantasy league that year and I lost my crypto, I was like super annoyed about it. And I decided that I'm only going to use crypto for purposes that might grow my stack. But then in my role at my old job, just being new to the space and following things, I saw the thought leadership that Shawn and some of the other SALT leaders were providing in the crypto space and really started to dial into the bridge that SALT was trying to provide. And I really just latched onto it and became a diehard fan. And then I applied for a role with SALT, didn't hear back for a month. And then I talked to the head of HR, and a week later, I was moving from New York to Denver. It certainly was a little bit of a slow uptick, and then it was just like being on a rocket ship. And it's been a wild and crazy near 6 years, but I've enjoyed every step of the way and had the ability to work with a lot of really cool customers and a lot of really cool employees at SALT's definitely the reason that I stay in the space, and the reason that I work as hard as I do. It's just awesome working with people like Kelley and Hunter and others who've been on this call for a very long time. Yeah, definitely a closet degen. I'm not a Litecoin maxi like someone else at our firm, but definitely got into it I was in a spot in my life where I was trying to figure out how do I make more money, and diversifying my portfolio into crypto seemed like a way to do it. And some people have done it way better than I have. And just taking a small percentage of my portfolio and getting into it is how I got here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. It's always enjoyable to hear everybody's stories about how they came about, stumbled on it, and got into it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I download all the time, like all these years. I don't know if I remember ever hearing your full story. That was cool.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Nothing wrong with being a DJ. I think the idea of the scarce element of something that's like actually provably scarce, definitely had an element that played a role in my adoption as well. Right, it wasn't completely all altruistic, although I think I leaned towards that. The concept of scarcity, and if you compare it to gold, which is what I was doing, I was coming from looking at it side by side and switched from being a gold bug to a Bitcoin bug. I was definitely driven much before the concept of degen, but in just wealth preservation and making money. Right, nobody wants to work forever. If there's a path that is faster, right? If there's the arc that you can jump on, you're going to take it. When a storm is coming, and coming out to 2008, it was a storm. I didn't want to go through another one of those ever again, if possible. And the idea of being able to just save in something that's infinitely contrasting against everything else that's always in flux was super compelling in making money. But yeah, anyways, thanks for the story. That was good.
No problem.
As we welcome anybody else up that wants to share a story, but we will also, I'm going to transition a little bit just to share an upcoming promotion to everybody that we're excited about. We have mentioned on the show previously around that we've been working on both building out the platform to be able to provide lend accounts where people can deposit crypto assets and earn a yield. We are continuing with the development work, which is fantastic. And in the meantime, we will be launching a promotion on March 1st for accredited investors that will allow those that are interested to earn rates up to 12% on USD, USDC, and USDT. We have a schedule where rates will we have limited amount of capacity at the higher rates, and it will start to drop as people deposit and bring crypto assets to the platform. But we will be launching that campaign tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. If you're interested, you can also go to saltlending.com/lend to learn more about the program. Shawn, you've been a big driver of the program. We've had lots of great conversations internally. Anything else you want to highlight about really what this means for SALT as a first step back into the space in a way to help people not only play on the borrow side, but play on the yield generation side.
Yeah, I guess just to note, it's in the name lending, and when you think of lending, it depends on where you're at. You're either looking to be the lender or you're looking to get money lent to you. And so there's two sides to that coin every single time. And Salt is not always the lender per se. We're the facilitator and do all of the parts required in order to enable both sides of that. But we've really historically never advertised or pushed anything out that was available. You basically had to come to us or we would have private conversations and work on a way to source capital. And that's still the case, but as we expand and see the scaling up effects that you can forecast with any company like ours from previous and other related companies that are in the lending space and just the business model in general, the key component is how competitive can you be on rates and how that is driven by how much liquidity can you have access to. And if you just forecast even this cycle, or let alone say the next 10 years, what is projected for Bitcoin and crypto to do, you can see that what we can see that for every time you see a 20% or 200% gain in the asset, everybody holding that asset is got decisions they can now make that they couldn't before. And in order to be able to have competitive rates on the capital side, so you got the people who want to borrow and then you got the people who want to lend, it's a continuous, I would call it, relationship where you always want to be able to set offers and go out to the market, which is driven by the borrowing side, but limited or restricted by the access on the lending side. So it's really exciting for us to be able to start scaling out that. There's a lot of demand for people looking for safe ways to save their crypto assets on and or dollars on both sides. And so facilitating it is core to our mission. We also see the market right now as having higher than we'd like rates. We think those will change, but we don't want to wait around. We want to be able to offer better rates than anybody else can possibly provide. And the way for us to do that is just continue to expand the lender side of the business. As we call it lend, you can go to saltlending.com/lend if interested. There's extra KYC and qualifications and paperwork you have to get through. So it's not a DeFi offer where you can just come and participate due to the respect we have and the requirements we have for the jurisdictions we do business in. But it does depend on where you live. So we're entertaining those conversations wherever possible to build the biggest, most robust, dynamic source of capital streams we can in our system, which just we know will provide a much better experience for anybody participating. But I guess that's a little bit more context there. If we want to dig into it or see if there's conversation around it, otherwise we can move to some other topics.
Yeah, no, that's Shawn. That's great. And open up the floor to anybody that has any questions about that. We'd love to, or an opinion. It's an offering that has been in the market in different shapes and forms. So we're excited to bring it back in a way that we think is helpful to customers and to get access to the over collateralized loan book, and excited to be going back down that path.
Yeah, I think the super interesting thing about this product that we're rolling out is that it's not a new product. And in fact, Salt was using and continues to use capital providers that basically are facilitating this exact same service. It's just through a third party. And we're bringing it inside and offering it to Salt's community as opposed to hoping that people find it elsewhere and find use for it elsewhere. It's very rare that you can find an investment where you know your investment is protected because you're providing capital for secured loans. And then what Salt's trading platform is and the expertise that we have on our side in order to protect those things. And so in this environment, it's a match made in heaven where we're bringing everything into Salt's ecosystem as opposed to having to go through third parties and other vendors to be able to offer this to the community and the space at large. I think it's a really good opportunity for people who are holding cash and maybe a traditional CD or maybe a high yield savings account. This is a great opportunity for you to get access to something that is safe because there's collateralized loans on the other side. We're not lending it out unsecured. So we're really excited to see this product get launched.
Dan, thanks for that. That's some great additional context. Kelley, is any requests or any additional questions from the audience?
No, no one's come up.
All right, we will call this a wrap. There's lots of sessions to get onto at ETHDenver. We appreciate everybody attending. A couple reminders. One, if you are in town, as Shawn said, do DM us. So we'll get you an invite to the event we're hosting on Friday night from 4 to 7. Equally, DM us. We'd love to meet up face to face if we have the opportunity to. Regarding the LEND promotion, be on the lookout for that. We will be starting to send out emails on March 1st, tomorrow, to enroll people into the LEND programs and get LEND accounts set up. And look forward to an exciting journey in March. Hopefully, finally bringing the Celsius refinance to a close for everybody, as well as launching some exciting new journeys ahead. Until then, thank you everybody for your time and coming today. Stay long, stay liquid, stay salty. See you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Cheers.